Coming up next week on Serious Joy TV. Join Sensei Christopher and astrologer Robbie Hunt for your live Sagittarius Mega Monthlies next Wednesday. Discover how divine intelligence will lead to your personal narrative change. Only on SeriousJoy.com.
Welcome to Astro Mingle, the spiritual podcast that mingles with the talented lightworkers and the innovative influencers of our time. We're thrilled to welcome back today a friend of mine of the show, Bree McLennan. Bree is an AI expert who has spent over 20 years in the field already, including 16 years supporting Australian government agencies. She's passionate about making artificial intelligence understandable and practical, with a background in data science, risk management, and helping organizations turn challenges into opportunities. Beyond tech, Bree brings insights from wellness and even astrology, putting a unique spin on today's biggest AI headlines. We're excited to tap into her expertise and her perspective and on some of the most urgent topics happening in AI right now. So please welcome Bree McLennan, Step 8 Aquarius. Yay!
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Christopher. It's great to be back.
It's great to be. It's been about 6 months, so we're starting to turn this into a habit. I was thinking about you the other day, how you're a Step 8 Aquarius, and it's like you're a person who has decided who you are, and there's no discussion. Like, you know who you are. That's one of the biggest strengths about you. You know, you're not, it's never up for debate, you know? So it just makes, as an expert, it makes you really sharp, you know, I just want to say, very interesting. Gosh, so I don't know if have you played with Grok's AI generation tool yet for TV?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. The AI generated images are so incredible. I can upload a picture from my childhood and it animates me as a boy, like in about 45 seconds. And it looks realistic. It looks very realistic. I can't believe it's not so obvious. I can literally upload my entire staff and have us doing things we should never do. I mean, it's very amazingly fast. And I'm seeing each of the AI platforms all having one thing or two things really good about them, but none of them having everything good about them. You know, I've noticed, I mean, so it's like we're all kind of being forced to subscribe to all of them for those of us who want to be on the cutting edge of it. So, you know, with AI generated images these days, especially in the news, okay, so I'm thinking, how do you spot when something's been manipulated or it's pushing an agenda? Like, how does the human consumer tell?
I think, I suppose take some lessons from yourself, like watching you over the years and, you know, the messages that you've been communicating to all of us, like come back to, you know, what's in here, what's in your heart, and what's the feeling that you're getting when you're consuming, you know, what could possibly be some sort of a deception or a message that doesn't quite resonate. It's almost like you feel it as a gut instinct, or it's a feeling. So if you get that kind of a response or reaction, you know, inquire further because there could be some truth behind it. I mean, at the moment, we're still in that age of, you know, there's deep fakes that are going around, there's disinformation going around. We're not quite there with, you know, regulation and compliance to say, let's watermark or, you know, put some kind of a tag on those communications to let you know that it's been AI generated. We're still in that age of it's in that gray area. We're just going to push the boundaries as far as we can until someone calls us out on it.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. I mean, it seems to me that we should just right away make a policy that you have to mark it with a symbol if it's AI. If you don't, you're liable. You know, it's just very simple. And why make it complicated? It feels like it has to, right? Yeah, it feels like it. Because I think even in the case of like, I mean, I was talking to some friends. When I went to film school, I had to draw, you know, every single frame of every camera setup I had to do, right? So you have to draw like these little pictures and you have to turn it into the teacher. I could now make the film for the teacher and pitch it with the entire film being made. That's how incredible the leap is. It's absolutely incredible to me. So I guess here's the question. I mean, you are a risk expert. That's what you do. So what's the real risk of people being exposed to this kind of high-tech propaganda, you know, over and over again? Does it actually change how we trust information, do you think?
I like to sort of bring it back to, you know, what are these tools inherently about? And to me, it's about decision support. So we're using these tools to supplement our knowledge base, our you know, what we think we know about the world, because we've got a decision we want to make. And so, you know, a classic case of this might be in elections, where we want to learn a little bit more about a candidate. Do we trust them? Do we not? Do we like their policies? Do we like what they're proposing to do? And, you know, you can think whatever you want about politicians, but just for the sake of the example, you know, an AI agent could, you know, if you were to query it, it might give you a certain, you know, set of information, but we don't know how skewed or biased that is. And people may be using that to make a decision of which way they want to vote. And
Right.
so without questioning, perhaps, or
Right.
having some sort of critical thought or discernment.
Right.
And so I see it as decision support, that it's leading us to a point where, and it may not just be elections, it could be, what are you going to, you're going to go to the grocery store, you're going to, buy some fruit and veg or brands or something like that. Which way are you going to go? And if something's being pushed, if you're getting pushed down a certain route, because that information is all you're going to go, all you're going to see, will you ever question, but what about the other products that weren't being pushed by this
Right.
decision support? Is it going to influence how you make your decisions at the end of the day?
Mhm.
So that's where I'd kind of come back to going, I think that there might be some concern and some risk in that space, that you might have biased decision making, which leads you down a path that you may not have ordinarily gone down had you not used those types of tools.
Yeah.
If they were removed, what other processes would you have gone through to make a decision?
Right.
And sort of think about it that way too.
Yeah. Well, it's like when Google was accused of only reminding Democrats to vote. That would be an
Yeah,
example of technology sort of cheating in a little way.
we've
So
seen it before.
right. It's like just a small percentage makes a difference.
Mm.
How, in your perspective, how should tech companies or social platforms actually be doing to rein in this fake of flood AI content? It's like, if you ran Facebook, or
Mm.
if you ran, Twitter, X, if you ran, YouTube, what would you do?
I think just from a transparency perspective, and it is kind of coming back to the values and mission statements for those organizations as well.
Mm,
Like, you want to hope that their values aren't just posters on a wall where you just
right.
walk past them and you don't give much attention to what is collectively agreed in those organizations for how you should be holding yourself and how you should be
Mm,
performing.
yeah.
But I'd like to hope that perhaps that there's some sort of discussion about the mandating of watermarking. That if you are producing products that are AI based, that you put some sort of an indicator there to let people know that the origins of how this was created was using AI, or the services are AI, and at least there's some sort of an engagement about the people who are consuming that have that awareness, and it's clear to them, so they're not being deceived that they think it's a human. There's been cases like this already. So I think I saw some more things like this in the news, where there were some products that they thought it was AI that was actually giving them services, but it was actually a team of humans working
Ah,
very hard behind the scenes to make it look like. So it's kind of like, may not always be an AI thing. There actually could be deception on the other flip side of that too, making it look like it's AI, but it's not.
right.
But I thought that might be a good one to kind of point out too. We're
Yeah.
still in this.
Okay.
It's like we're still in this grey space where because we don't have these mandated decisions for policy and procedure and even ISO standards as well.
Yeah.
It's in this murky space where we're kind of testing how far we can push it before we're going to go, no, that's it. Worldwide, this is what you now have to do. We've seen what the consequences can be. We're leading people down garden paths. It's not truthful. And we're in this space now going, I think that veil is coming back on, when we are being deceived, we are calling people out, just globally. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so maybe this could be one of those things that comes out of that there might be some mandate about, the watermarking or how we tag services,
Yeah.
make it clear to people
We
from a
certainly have the
just
metadata.
purely truth.
We can in the metadata do it too. It's like I think we should
Mm.
tag the authentic stuff too, like that. Tag them both, like real, not real. You should get credit for it being real too. I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not
And
fake.
I'll probably add to the question too. I think there's some opportunity there to really look at the way we're training the AI solutions as well. So just the value of doing no harm. So when you
Mm,
design from a perspective of doing no harm, it sort of starts to influence all of those design aspects that go in. So the way that you're planning a project, the way that you're executing on the project, the way that you are developing the solution, training data. So we talk a lot
mhm.
about the way how the data needs to be set up in such a way to support success. For these types of ambitions, you
Yeah.
want to make sure that the training data is representative of doing no harm. And can you
Yeah.
test for that? Can you verify that? Can you validate? They're all really important things. And perhaps there's not enough focus in that particular realm.
Yeah.
We're sort of too worried about the outward facing PR of what these companies are doing, but internally, like, what's their internal practice actually looking like, and how's that set up for success? And it does come back to the value statements as well. It's like, if you have a company that doesn't value doing no harm. And they're all, maximize profits at all costs. It doesn't matter what you do, all your projects will end up the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, even just at a basic human level, the way we execute on work,
Mm-hmm.
the executive production elements of it, that's got to be considered.
Yeah. I mean, I almost think we should make the AI check itself for being harmful.
Yeah.
Maybe another AI to be checked by a third-party AI. That'd
There's
be cool.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
No?
And I
Yeah.
think there's a technique called ensembling in machine learning where you might create multiple models because
Okay.
they all might be very good at one particular task or
Right.
answering one particular question. But when you start to combine them together in a similar realm of work, you can average out a result. And so, what might be the pros and cons of one starts to even out as you combine them together.
Mm.
And so, from a testing and checking perspective, that also could be, a valid approach that could be used.
I'm sure there'll always be one bad apple in that AI, the evil one, right?
You want to smooth that out a little bit or eliminate, like if it's an
We all know
anomalous.
number 16 is evil.
Mm.
We talk a lot about AI shaking up jobs all the time. People are worried about that, but what's one way to manage big career transitions right now? Learn AI.
I mean, I think it's helpful to, if you're curious about it, follow that curiosity, do
Mhm.
do your reading if that's interesting to you. Watch YouTube videos or watch content that has some sort of educational value to you that gives you some inspiration. Like, again, it's like
Mhm.
follow your instinct on this too.
Mhm.
Even just to learn a little bit more starts to demystify the subject. It starts to help address any fears that you might have that might be irrational,
Mm.
or they might be completely founded as well. But just to have a bit of information, it's like knowledge is power.
Right.
It can be quiet power as well. And then inside of that, like, it might inspire you to take a different route. You go, well, now I know a little bit about AI, I might choose differently. I might choose this for myself. I've always kind of got this quiet idea in my head going, if I wasn't in the industry, and I wasn't doing AI work, I wasn't doing data work, what would I be doing?
Mm.
And I kind of go, I think that there could be a lot of value in meditation teaching,
Mm.
just the insides of the mind. Going out on a nice day like today, where I am here, and going to a park and helping people sort of find their inner peace. It's kind of
Mhm.
like a little bit of a thing there. And it's totally different, like away from technology, away from
Mm.
the electrical grid, and just sort of reconnecting to nature and finding something like that. But again, there's a lot of people out there that are really confused right now that,
Mm.
they're not sure and they don't have certainty about what the next couple of months, the next year will bring. They don't know how or what stance they should take,
Mhm.
in their career and in their profession. So a lot of people have worked so hard in their lives to be able to get to where they are. And with having that uncertainty of not knowing if there's stability in the future, it can be really harmful to people, like just from a psychological
Mm.
perspective, just completely. And it's like you look at the mental health rates, you look at the health rates of the Western world in particular,
Mm.
and that really concerns me. Like, even from a risk perspective, that's concerning. And it's like all of our approaches to try and curb that aren't working. And
Mhm.
so, maybe that's a call out that, at what point is it too far?
Mhm.
And the human condition sort of starts to rise up and go, no, this is what we should be, and this is how we should use tools, and this is how we do decision making, this is how we do decision support. So I guess it's and it's an individual case by case basis too, with managing transition. And there's a lot of things in life coaching about what does the destiny have in store for individual people. um, do you embrace the change? Do you
Mm.
resist the change? What side of the coin? Like, if it's a black and white, it's a a yin or a yang, or it's a duality. What side do you choose? Do you have to choose a side at all?
Mhm.
Do you just sit in the middle of it and just let it all unfold? I suppose, yeah, it's sort of do you have to pick a side? It's probably a
It's
question
chosen
I
for
have.
you.
That's getting
Yeah.
really philosophical as well. But I mean, these are things I think about every day. That in my line of work, I might be overseeing the production of data and digital assets. And I do kind of think about how are these going to be used and how does that impact the people that are going to be using that. Those people have families. Those people have communities. you know, what's that going to do in the long term? And I don't think we've really got enough studies, you know, just globally about the longitudinal effects of what's happening right now. We don't have enough data to kind of give a prediction. And that's probably adding to the confusion and the uncertainty. And I know this from risk management too, that inherently it's difficult for people to sit in the uncertainty. It's very difficult for people to be comfortable in being uncomfortable. It's one of those things, like, and again, it's a choice. Like, you can sit in it or you can escape from it, or, you know, run for the hills, you know, because you don't want to be uncomfortable. And so it's not for everybody. And so it does make me wonder, you know, what's going to happen next. And I suppose with the way how things are happening so rapidly as well, we haven't had time to catch our breath and sort of reflect and, you know, sit for a moment and just sort of decompress. It just feels like it just keeps escalating. So yeah, I'm really not sure. I think it's a bit of an open-ended question. It's like, maybe ask me again in 6 months' time.
Probably the rest of our life. Well, it reminds me sort of like, you know, there would not be a bunch of China people here if we hadn't built the railroad. You know, a lot of people on the railroad, like the people who are the switchers, were African Americans. First time they got a job because it was so dangerous, it opened up a job market for them. So a lot of times there's unexpected opportunity. I wouldn't say being thrown on a ship and taken across sea as a slave is a good thing, you know, with China. But I just say, you know, look at the Asian population in the United States. It was because of the advent of the locomotive, you know. So there are big shifts that happen as a result. And there's a lot of openings too, you know, not just closures. You know, what kind of job do you think is especially at risk? Like, is there anything, you know, it's just like, you know, definitely on the, you know, deceased list?
Oh, I think that there's probably some space in the manufacturing area as well. Like, I've been seeing, you know, more and more, like, the way how, you know, manufacturing companies are starting to implement automation. You know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, you know, much more human involvement. You know, you look at the Amazon warehouses and how all of the robotics are being used to move things around. Like, a lot of us are using those services to, you know, to order products and things. So I look at that and I go, manufacturing is a big one. And then, you know, what's really getting a lot of airtime is the administration, sort of, you know, office, you know, front of house kind of looking jobs, you know, where you've got discrete tasks that could be, you know, you could automate with some sort of, you know, AI agent, you know, preparing emails, preparing communications, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of graphic design in there too. So I'd suggest, you know, those are probably sitting there on the list. And then, you know, things that, you know, have a fair degree of repeatability might be in that list too. So yeah, they're probably my picks that I'm sort of seeing at the moment.
Okay, good thing I'm not in manufacturing. You know, from a policy or leadership lens, you know, what can companies really do, you think, to ensure that automation doesn't, like, just help the very few at the top? Because it seems like it's one of those ladder climbing things. Like, they've got the tools. You all are laid off. Everyone from, you know, this salary down. You know, good luck. You know, we canceled your severance. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, because the computer can do it. But, you know, I'm not. You know, on the flip side, I'm not letting the computer take over anything. I found so many mistakes in AI with astrology. I don't trust it.
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. You know, from the top, like from the top of the hierarchy, being really clear with the people about, again, what are the ingredients being included in the decision making? Can we make those transparent? Based on what have we made this decision? Is it, you know, have they, you know, show me the workings out, show me the math equation here, show me the risk assessment, what went into that, and make that transparent. Who was consulted, who was involved? Was it, you know, groundswell of the people that have organically, you know, have they gone in this direction? Or, you know, did they have, you know, consulting firms come in and suggest to them that this was the best approach? And especially in government, as well, this really matters. So and the realistic nature of, you know, those decisions as well. So again, being able to show your workings out, you know, really starts to provide necessary information to the people who are affected, to, you know, you can call people out on the decisions, or, you know, gracefully challenge, hey, that could have been a faulty call, and here's why. Here's the downstream ramifications of making a decision like that. And so we are seeing examples already. I think there's been a few banks, even in Australia, where they decided to automate and bring in AI agents to help with customer support, to help with some common tasks and workflow processes. And shortly after implementation, so I think they let it go for a couple of months, but they realized that the amount of money that they spent in actually doing that and the return on investment was very poor. And they had their metrics tracking and the benefits, and the benefits realization metrics on top of that. And they realized actually the human workforce was more effective. And sheepishly, they had to sort of renege on their decision and then try and rehire. But in a situation like that, you would never get back the original employees that were laid
Right.
off, because you've harmed them. You've done the harm. The harm has been done.
Yeah.
And so those people might go, you know what? Banks are a terrible organization. I'm going to find a different career. I'm going to, pivot. I'm going to change. And so, yes, I think being transparent is a really important thing to do right now, and to be able to show your workings out and explain how you and rationalize how you've reached a decision. And at the end of the day, like, it looks very embarrassing when you make a call like that and you have to renege and sheepishly, undo what you've just done. So we're seeing that more and more.
I'll tell you another really horrible organization, the IRS. I'm concerned about AI and IRS, that it's going to start, flagging people and automatically taking away houses and just starting to do stuff automatically with no trained accountant to really look at it. I'm very concerned about that. We haven't talked about that at all. I want transparency in that level, because I have had like 3 or 4 mistakes that they've sent me where they said, you owe money. I'm like, no, I don't. Oh, sorry, you're right. It's like, well, how are you saying that you were wrong? Was that an AI mistake? Like, it's not. I think it should be disclosed. We use AI to calculate your tax return, and so I should, right away, I should be like, nope, I appeal with a human. You have the right to appeal with a human anytime. I just think that's going to be dangerous.
I think that is a really important point to call out with the IRS. We had a similar situation with Services Australia here in Australia. So Services Australia is responsible for like your social security equivalent in the United States. So people who are without work, if they're unemployed, they need supports, and they can get some financial support, through this agency. And they implemented what was now famously called robo-debt. So it was an automated attempt to try and reclaim monies. So if they overpaid the population or people, it was a way for people to be able to repay, so things would balance out. So it was just making sure that people had, they were paid the right amount of money at the right time, things like that. But it was based on a very flawed design, and the consequences of that actually, it did harm. It harmed people, and it harmed people to the point where people took their lives. Depression. Yeah, it was very dark. And so it was spitting out, bills that were enormous, that people could never repay. But what was happening was there was a decision made inside this internal organization, which is a federal government agency, that it was kind of like I mentioned before about decision support, but instead of it being a human oversee, it was we default all the decisions to this automation because we trust it.
Let's go into it.
And what was also really alarming was the lack of effective risk management oversight and governance, which was, there were people, the staff, who were being involved in this project to build it out, who were voicing their concerns, and they were landing nowhere. And so these were the people who would deal with these people on a day-to-day basis and have the conversations about, I can see that you don't owe money, but this system, which we have to use, is telling us that you do, but we know that it's wrong. And so, and we can prove that it's wrong. And this was making its way through the chains of command, but it was falling flat. So for whatever reason, there was no continuous improvement strategy to actually, come back and fix those mistakes. They waited until there was a royal commission and the decisions handed down going, this was gross neglect at such scale. So, the IRS, this sounds like a very similar story, that you have to be very careful, when you are developing solutions, that you've got your unit testing in, you've got your peer review, you've got some sort of governance policy overlay. You're listening to those people who are reporting risk. You're taking them seriously. They're showing you a better way to do things if you want to actually achieve success. And so, if the objective was noble to make sure that, there's a balance in the financial, payments, fine, but make sure it's actually doing that and back test it and validate that that's actually true. Take that feedback on board. That was not done. And so that's why you get there's an uprising. There is a big problem here, and it's unconstitutional and it's illegal. So IRS, maybe it's in a similar situation, but it's unfortunate that we have to wait until there's such really terrible consequences to act. When you know that there's an evidence base before that even happens. So, what systems, and again, it's not even AI at this point. It's about, as humans, how are we trusting in each other to take on board that advisory and work with it?
Yeah. Interesting. What about the carbon footprint of AI? They're all over the headlines. What do you think people are still missing about the environmental risks of data centers? It seems like I hear different stories of horror and not horror. I mean, if it comes from a solar panel, is it bad?
Ooh, this is a really, really good question. I have a personal opinion.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
It might be controversial.
Yeah.
Might be really controversial. I remember having a bit of a short story. I was flying to Adelaide to attend a national risk conference, some time ago. And I remember flying over southern Victoria. So there's a border between South Australia and Victoria. And there was this massive, there's a wind farm and there's a solar panel farm. And I'm looking down, it's 10 kilometers up in the air. And I'm looking down at the land going, what have we done? Like, that used to be beautiful forest. It was national park. Those agricultural lands were there to grow food and, crops, and fresh produce that we could eat. And we've scarred it with all of this mechanical, inorganic solutioning. And I look at this and I kind of wonder if, the green approaches are really a scam at the end of the day. I look at this and I go, but this is also the Aquarius in me going, surely there is a better way to produce energy that doesn't require us to take up massive amounts of land, install, these behemoths of things to generate a little bit of energy that still doesn't quite support the entirety of the supply demand requirements as a society. I look at the failure rates on, the wind, the wind farms, the solar panels, that they need constant maintenance. The solar panels don't work well, so well when it's cloudy or at night. You need to be able to clean them. So they get lichen and fungus growing on them, which reduces their ability to produce, power. So I look at that and I go, look at the maintenance costs on these. And then when the windmills break, those blades you can't easily recycle. So it makes me wonder, I go, when they fail and we've got to repair them, there's so much overhead to do that. And plus they're so large. You need huge trucks and you've got to shut down highways to be able to transport them. And as a risk person, that just boggles my mind going, why can't it be like Star Trek where we have a box you just turn on and everyone has a box and it just produces what power we need to do what we need to do. Say for the data centers, why do we need to go to such an extreme length to damage the nature that's around us to be able to support this? Like, where is the innovation in the power generation? This question I'd be asking, because I go, surely that's not sustainable. And we're seeing the fracture lines like for this too, going, and we're mining the earth for rare earth minerals, and they're rare for a reason. And then when things break, we've just wasted those rare earth minerals. How are we going to get those back to move them into another, life cycle? And I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of engineers and scientists, that might be watching this going, maybe there are some solutions, but they're not as commercially widely available as perhaps we'd like them to be. Are they still sitting in research labs where they're still figuring this out? But the ship's already sailed. We've got, like, look at the landscape. When you fly up in a plane, you see that for kilometers and kilometers. It's really alarming. And it makes me wonder too, like, we're starting to see more, effects of non-native EMF. So I've been reading a little bit on Dr. Jack Kruse, who's a huge crusader in the decentralized medicine space and a huge, advocate for sunlight and just, the spectrum of sunlight and the benefits that it can have, on the human condition. And if you're around solar panels that are generating electromagnetic fields that may not be beneficial, and you've got animals trying to graze, on lands, it just kind of gets me a little bit riled up. I'm just like, what are we doing? That doesn't look like a good solution. And then, paired up with a data center, again, it's kind of I know that we're getting better with nanotechnology and, the manufacturing around, smaller and smaller, CPUs and GPUs that, we can use to crunch numbers. Why are we building such massive scale data centers when we should be getting better at this micro manufacturing? That also boggles my mind too, going, have we screwed something up in the math? It should be getting smaller, but it's getting larger.
Humans always like things bigger. That's just us. We're finding out bigger, better is better. What about the difference between updating an old center versus building a new one? Do you think that if we channel that energy and investment into, regenerating old things, it could be useful.
I think given where we are as a people, especially Western society,
Yeah.
I mean, you look around today, like you look at all the big cities and the way how we're doing new construction. I'm very concerned for the quality of those new constructions.
Me
I'm
too.
seeing, again, more and more. I know here in Australia, we've got a few people on TikTok who specialize in site inspections, and they look into the quality of the build, whether it be commercial, like high-rise buildings, apartments, residential properties,
Yeah.
You name it. And the way they're calling out what they're finding, the defects, is
Yeah.
absolutely astonishing.
Yes.
And it also comes back to the level of regulation
Yeah.
and compliance. And it is important in construction, because you don't want to have a roof collapse or a building
Right.
collapse
Yeah.
on its own because it was poorly designed.
Right.
And same thing for energy efficiency and things like that. And when it rains, like, you don't want it to leak.
Right.
That matters for data centers. Definitely. You don't want Mother Nature coming in and destroying things if it can be prevented. But I do get concerned about the quality of new constructions, whether it be residential or commercial. So on that front, I'd probably go with the route of retrofitting. That if you've got an existing build that ticks all the boxes, it's physically sound, it's secured, it's well designed, the
Yeah.
ventilation works really well, it's hitting the mark for those things, then why not consider a retrofit and fit it out to make it compliant and compatible with the latest standards.
Yeah.
That might actually be cost effective in the long run,
Yeah.
because you don't have to go back and fix all the defects and worry about it, being compliant from a build perspective.
Yeah.
That'd just be my thoughts on that. Although, maybe there could be some cases where a new build might be warranted, but again, like, you'd want to make sure that you are hitting the mark with environmental studies. You're hitting the mark
Yeah.
with everything that you're setting out to achieve
Right.
from a good perspective, and trying not to do harm to the land around it.
Yeah. I personally believe that we have really smart energy, and JP Morgan's and the Rockefellers bought them up a long time ago and hit them.
Yeah.
I also I agree with you on the construction. When I was looking at new homes in Texas, the new homes that are going really fast had flaws in them when they were brand new. Like that I was discovering in the showrooms. Like, my brother and I, like, there's a crack in the foundation right here. You're seriously selling this? Oh, that's normal. No, my house never cracked in its foundation when growing up. There was never a crack there. So so there's this housing boom that's happened here in the United States, due to all that Blackwater buying up all the homes. I'll just be honest here on the show. But in the day, everyone's being forced these really cheaply made, pre-manufactured things. And it's like, one big bad wolf comes by, it's going to blow your house down. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be in that. I'd rather be something older that stood the time already of 80 years. And it's like, okay, I'll stay there. It's got more practical potential. What changes are maybe in regulation or industry standards would you want to see to make sure AI's growth is planet friendly? Like, what would be one or two that you just want to see right now in your wish list?
I think if you can incentivize, companies in the right way, so find the right ways to reward them when they're doing well. I think I might have mentioned this maybe in the previous chat that we had. It's like, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. So, giving, it could be rebates, it could be accolades, it could be status, whatever it happens to be, but for the right reasons that are driving the right behavior. Because at the moment, it's very much, the cost function is maximize cost at all costs. Make as much money as you possibly can. Don't worry about the harm that you're doing. But can we start to flip that on its head, going, like we saw the metrics about, we're talking about global health, and how those rates are only going up, and we're heading into the state of a very unhealthier population. If we're starting to see it going back the other way, and we're becoming healthier as a population, and we're getting towards that utopia and not a dystopia, how are we going to reward that? How do we encourage companies to aim for that instead of the other direction? Can we start to see that add up to something nice in society for a change?
I don't even think when it comes to Google or OpenAI or even Grok that money's an issue. They're spending as much money as they want. They'll not pay taxes and show a deficit forever. It's on American people are really paying for that. We're going to take a commercial break, and we come back. We'll be talking about how AI is impacting our creativity, our healthcare, and even astrology after this.
You started your business for freedom, but somewhere along the way, it turned into chaos. You're trying to fit your unique vision into someone else's blueprint, and it's leaving you feeling overwhelmed and second-guessing your every move. That's exactly why we created From Chaos to Clarity, your 12-week live business intensive. We give you the courage to claim your voice, the clarity to build your unique framework, and the conviction to lead your business your way. You'll get live power hours to hone your strategy and weekly accountability sprints to make sure the work actually gets done. Stop following, start building. You don't need to do it all alone.
Did you know that discordant energies such as illness, trauma, violence, and depression can linger on a property for hundreds of years, going all the way back to the very beginning of that parcel of land? This can also happen with family heirlooms, antiques, or previously owned furniture. If you've been feeling blocked in life, more ill than usual, or just uncomfortable in your home, your space could be holding on to residual energies. Refresh My Property can help clear these energies remotely. Scan the QR code to get your free phone consultation today and begin clearing your space and your life.
Step Astrology is the key to unlocking your past, your purpose, and your heart. Are you ready to understand yourself better than ever before? Enlightened edutainment awaits inside the Sirius Joy Vault. Subscribers receive in-depth insight into the planetary energies with daily texts, pep talks, and more, personalized to your unique blueprint. Subscribe now for only $3.99 your first month at SiriousJoy.com.
And we're back. I'm here with Bree McLennan, an AI expert living in the country of Australia, who spent over 20 years in the field of AI, including for Australian government risk management. We hear a lot about how AI can automate everything. Does that worry you when it comes to our own ability to think creatively or solve tough problems?
Absolutely. One of my concerns is when we default our decision processes, like we've discussed before, what critical skills are we allowing just to fade away, into the distance? And, things like our ability to discern information, our ability to, trust our own processes when making decisions, you know, those things that we would ordinarily have if we were face to face having a conversation, those skills and being able to, relate to other people, that adds up. Our ability to think creatively when we're faced with problems. Now we've got this tooling. How is that challenging our ability to, face problems and kind of come up with creative solutions? We've done this in the past. How are we doing it now?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting though. By the same token, I was thinking again, going back to the Grok video stuff, it's like, because production comes out perfect, it only leaves room for creativity to stand out at this point. Like in some ways it applauds creativity more than ever before. Because everyone has a Grok, kind of thing. What could individuals or companies do today, you think, to make sure creativity isn't lost as AI gets better and better and they canceled art in every school in America?
I reckon you've got to have those moments where you just totally unplug. Step away from the machine, take your hands off it, go outside, get out on the grass, like touch the grass, touch the tree, get out into the sunshine. Like this is, Dr. Jack Kruse kind of speaking through a little bit too. Get out and get some sunshine. It's a great way to sort of reset, your own biology, your own physiology, your own chemistry as well. It gives you a different perspective when you're in a different environment. And nature is it's one of the best teachers. And so, I've said this before, nature is the best teacher, especially when it comes to, the way we design solutions, the way that we go about solving problems. It can give us more information. It gives us a bit of a path forward. And so I'd always, advocate for, have those times where you completely unplug from technology. It might be hard for some people, but I think the results are worth it.
I'll take you up on that. Do you see a risk that we'll lose important human skills, for instance, by relying on AI, like we all forget how to cook or something? How would you prevent that?
I think you think about this in history where we've had traditions that have been passed down, from family to family. I'm thinking, in my mind, examples, from Japan where you've got traditional ways of making, clothing, or it could be making scripts or things like that. I think it's still important to be able to have those traditions and still, make time and space to be able to work on those and do those things and not have, the influences of automation and technology come on in. I think there's a time and a place, but those certain things that you want to preserve, if they really matter to society and the fabric of society, find a way to just make the time and space that's necessary to protect them and preserve them. I think that's an important thing that we need to acknowledge. But I do think too that there are some skills that are being eroded as well. We're seeing it in the younger population, where I think there's been examples where you've got kids that are just about to graduate high school, and they're not even sure if the last 12 years of their education is going to be sufficient for them to survive, in the years ahead. And that's concerned. Like if you've got, a young population of kids coming through that don't have confidence in their own educational backing, how effective are they going to be in contributing to society? How well have we set them up, or not? And so, but there's some things there I think are crucial that we've got to watch out for. So, the ability to critically think, the ability to think, further than just one step ahead. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for risk management. There's a place for risk management for a lot of folk. The ability to, think through a scenario right to its end and keep asking the question of why, getting to root causes, getting curious about that subject matter.
Yeah.
And figuring out what to do about it. So it's less about, what the problem is, but how you're going to act.
Yeah.
And is that going to be appropriate? And sometimes machines can be helpful for this, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're matters of the heart. Sometimes they're matters of emotion. And those are some skills there that we've really got to, pay attention to, like the emotional nurturing, the way we protect. There's things in there that you've been, teaching and advocating for years in there as well that I think should be protected.
Yeah. Well, looking at education, for instance, are there changes you would make so people keep building deep skills and adaptability in the AI-driven world? And does it have to include AI, or should include AI? AI technically has the understanding of probably being able to figure out how to get information into a student. So I can see it would be incredibly powerful. But then again, if it's programmed to keep people from knowing something, that's incredibly powerful misuse of it.
I think, looking at education, I think there is still opportunity for people to, keep building their skills. So as a coach relationship, it could be I want to learn this subject matter, teach me chemistry, for example. Set it up in such a way that steps you through the basic elements of the subject matter, and you can sort of task it to offer certain challenges to demonstrate your understanding. So just like you would in a classroom, you could individualize that too for individual passions and pursuits. That if you've got a child or a kid or a person that you're passionate in one particular topic or area and you want to, do better at, help individualize the curriculum for you so you can get to where you want to be. But again, it does take that requirement of understanding how do you set goals and how do you do that in a wise way. There are some things that sort of precede just the usage of AI in that point, that it might require someone who's maybe a bit more advanced in years to sort of help mentor and sort of put the frameworks around us to make sure that you're using AI safely and you're achieving the goals that you've really intended to.
What about healthcare? What stands out to you as the biggest, most hopeful breakthrough on the horizon when it comes to AI in healthcare and access for everyone, perhaps?
I think I'm going to default to a bit of a Jack Kruse thing here, that I really admire his approach with looking at decentralizing medicine, and it's sort of bringing back the individual to the center of the attention there. That one size fits all approaches clearly aren't working. We're seeing this. You look at the global statistics. Are they going up or down? As a society, things are getting perceivably worse.
Yeah.
So that therefore means we need to take a different approach. And the idea of individualized medicine, like looking at the individual condition, the individual patterns. We've all got different stuff going on. We've all got different configurations, different proportions of things. We've all picked up different bugs in different ratios. And we don't take that into consideration, more thoroughly enough, I think, in our current approaches. And so, AI could help with that, knowing the case history, knowing about those patterns, knowing about, all of those different configurations that we might have, previous injuries, all those kinds of things.
Right.
But then looking at what examples or actions have been beneficial. What has worked well for you in the past? Could that work well again? and then, also starting to look at new novel ways, or even the research that doesn't quite make its way to mainstream. We're not following the patterns of the generalistic, old way of doing things, which clearly are not working.
Yeah.
Challenge AI going, well, here's your performance function. Given that might be true, think of a different approach that potentially could. Ask it to speculate. Ask
Yeah.
it, it's like in science, like it's a bit of a dangerous thing. It's like you can speculate, you can form a hypothesis, but you need to be able to find evidence that's going to be able to support those claims. So can you still start to approach that in a scientific way, and do that safely as well? So, again, it's remembering that whole do no harm aspects, that you want it, whatever you're doing with the AI approach and the automation without a human, that you still got those really important goals in mind, that, do no harm. You want to do better than where you were. Don't don't create any unnecessary suffering. They have, give us an offering of staged action plans and treatment protocols that are beneficial for the individual, and we can measure the effect that they're actually having a benefit.
My brother Michael told me a story about how the imaging, how for cancer, when you go in to get an AR, you go in to get like an X-ray on breasts, for instance, to see if there's any breast, cancer building. And he said that the AI that studied the X-rays actually was starting to spot, breast cancer like a good 9 months to a year ahead out of when they could actually spot it as a technician. And of course, I guess the Union of Technicians in California, anyways, sued to prevent it from coming into the hospitals, because it meant job loss for them. Or another story too about how automatic driving cars would be legal in California if the police association wasn't suing for the loss of traffic tickets. So it's like, okay, we are not being really smart here with all this intel. Here we have AI, and we're not being so smart about it. AI just run our AI. How do you see decentralized AI systems making a difference in the real world? What does decentralized mean, for instance? I mean, how does it do, like when it comes to real world preventative medicine, like, or even monitoring our own health at home? Like, how is that going to help, you think?
I think just to come back to a point of definition, like especially when it comes to healthcare, like a lot of us are drawn to the word the World Health Organization, WHO. So that is an institution that attempts to try and centralize its knowledge bases, its approaches, the way that it might approach a pandemic. So you've got consistency across the board in all the all the countries that subscribe to that. That is a form of centralization. You've got in America, you've got the Rockefellers and all of the the very wealthy families that have had a huge influence in the way how medicine has been provided to the population over many years. That is a form of a centralized viewpoint. Decentralization, again, because it comes back to the individual and the individual's goals and ambitions and approaches, that you might have multiple valid approaches that aren't necessarily agreed to in a centralized model, but it's the will of the people. It's, I have the will that I want to try this, and so therefore it should be, allowed. It's your life, it's your ambition, it's your, it's your pursuit, all power to you. So I kind of see it, through that lens.
Okay.
And I think that there is a lot of validity in being able to, have the ability to be in charge of your own life. And we're all born, like, it's the whole thing about nature. Like, nature's whole goal is to sustain itself and experience itself. It's not there to just die tomorrow. It's there to have an experience, to grow, to evolve. In a decentralized medicine view aims to support that. So bringing in, whatever you do has to add up to something, good or gooder, or, better and better.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. It's like, yeah, you've said it right there along there. I mean, at the end of the day, it has to serve the individual. And so, but there won't be control if it serves the individual. There seems to be this desire to control everything from somewhere, the who everywhere, so what's that about? Because I can't believe that as we get more intelligent, that what's good for South Africa people and their genetics would be necessarily good for ours, and vice versa. And so this assumption that we're all one, I think is a little arrogant, ironically. There's a lot of concern about privacy, of course, and how we make sure patient data, for instance, stays safe as healthcare becomes more digitized and decentralized. And it's funny to see this kind of come back at you. I mean, I will go to a doctor and say, I need this prescription, and they'll be like, you just got that yesterday. And it's like, well, kind of, they owe me that. It's like, now I'm explaining, like, wait, I never let you see that, So it's like, not that I was pulling a fast one, but I don't like that. I don't like, a stranger, basically telling me more about my health than I have, than I know. So how does it all become safe? Because I'll tell you, it sure seems like, you know, it sure seems like ChatGPT is profiling me. It feels that way. It just feels that way. My senses are telling me that. You know, I had a conversation with Grok. Grok claims it does not profile, that every time it comes to an experience, it starts off brand new ignorant to you, which has really proven to be pretty true, because when I bring something up from the past, it remembers. So I'm like, you said you don't remember, and here you are remembering. So where's the line, right? So I don't know. See, my biggest concern is that AI identifies a person as a troubled citizen, and then you're on some list somewhere.
I think, you know, your gut feels onto something here too. Like if you think about it from a technical perspective, from a logical, you know, kind of cold calculating perspective for a moment, that if you want to, you know, have a service that's providing the best possible service, you're going to try and elicit information that's going to help you get there.
Right.
And so it would not be a surprise to me that if there's, you know, some sort of a configuration file that's sitting in, you know, there with Grok to, you know, make a point of, you know, can you identify this person's web browser? Like, what type of operating system are they using? I mean, sure, the microphone's turned off, but is there a way, you know, so through some sort of a backdoor control mechanism at a hardware level that you can actually listen into their voice? Can you identify, you know, gender? Can you identify emotion? Can you identify those things? Can we use that as a data point to influence how we respond in that ChatGPT session? It wouldn't be a surprise to me. I mean, we're in Scorpio season. How far are we pushing those boundaries till we get called out? And we are starting to see that sort of emerge a little bit more in the news as well, where there's certain shady things and practices that were going on. That, you know, the engineers are speaking out about how these agents are being maintained. So, you know, if you are getting that experience again, it's that gut feel going. If something doesn't feel right, there could be something to it. But again, you know, how do you find the evidence? How do you find the proof to be able to demonstrate, you know, and back up what you're feeling? So yeah, privacy is also a huge topic too. And something professionally, you know, that I've seen is, you know, the way how we mask, how do we apply data security? How do we apply, you know, governance to certain key data points? So, you know, what do you consider to be sensitive information? How do you protect against that? So in the data sets that are being fed to these models, like we have to be very careful about, you know, are we exposing names, phone numbers, contact numbers? Are we exposing addresses? Are we exposing really sensitive things about what ailment that you're experiencing? Not everybody wants to declare that to the world. And so again, like I think there has to be a level of control that the individual has about what gets exposed and why. But importantly is that transparency about how is this information actually being used and why. So that's part of that conversation. And people have a right to anonymity. So, you know, you're anonymous in your dealings. That is a principle in privacy, especially here in Australia. It actually forms one of the privacy principles, that people have a right to be anonymous. I don't know how true it is for the rest of the world, but I think that should be something that is considered in our discussions about when we're using data and how we're applying security measures.
Yeah, I see that. How could AI then help people like in rural areas? You know, like for like kids who are remote or underserved or can't access traditional healthcare. Like, does AI solve some of those problems?
It could theoretically. You know, again, like depending on how you've set it up, you know, you put the safeguards in, you put the guardrails in, you know, could it step you through, you know, the resolution for an ailment? You know, could it help you identify if there's a product that you need? You know, is it an antibiotic? Is it an antiviral? Is it a protocol? Something to help you feel better? Can it help you triage? You know, if the issue's serious enough, like, do you need to call, you know, for emergency services? Do you need to call for first aid? Whatever it happens to be, could it step you through that process? And especially if you're in an area where you know your cell phone or your mobile phone doesn't cover, could it help you in those moments? Sure. You know, depending on if it's been designed well enough, it could help.
So what's your advice about finding that sweet spot between AI for personalized fitness, let's say, or just listening to your own body for intuition? It's like, you know, where is the smarts?
I love this question because it does hit me personally. I've had that background as an athlete. You know, I'm still striving for, you know, my athleticism. You know, in my time, you know, being a mum now, like trying to find that time to train and to, you know, find rhythm. I've come from that childhood of, you know, AI wasn't around when I was a kid. You know, the best I had was like a little stopwatch. You know, it was battery operated. You know, you hit the button, it'll tell you how fast you were between point A and point B. And things have progressed so wildly now that we've got these smartwatches that
Yeah.
they tell you exactly your geolocation, where you are in the world. They'll tell
Yeah.
you how many steps, how many calories, all these kinds
Yeah.
of things. And there's a part of me that goes, I think there's a place for these types of tools, especially if you're new to the journey and if you
Mhm.
just need to get off the couch and you just need to go walk 10 steps down the street. They can be
Mhm.
really beneficial to tell you, hey, you've achieved something today. You've got a reward. There's the reward
Mhm.
cycle.
Yeah, yeah.
You get a little dopamine here. It feels good. You do it
Right.
again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think it's good from that perspective of if you've done nothing and you need to do something, it's really good to get the momentum going and at
Mhm.
least to build the pattern in. I mean, we talk about, magical numbers like 40 days being a good timeline to build a habit. It can
Yeah.
be really good to start to build, that type of a pattern of behavior. But as someone who's seasoned and as someone who's experienced, I grew up, I've been trained in that realm of, yes, you can use the tech, but when it's a championship, when it's a competition, when you're performing, I've got no time for the gadgets. I've got to
Mm.
know my body well enough to know
Mhm.
what it's doing moment to moment and understand, what it needs in those moments. And that's
Mm.
not something I think, tech can definitely help you start the journey, but in those moments where it really matters, there's a point at which you let go of it. And it's okay at that moment. You can survive. It's okay to be alone with your thoughts and alone with your feelings because you've got the toolbox to be able to handle that and the
Mhm.
skill set to be able to handle that. So I
Yeah.
kind of look at it, I look at it in both angles going, I think there's a place. It's like, but
Mhm.
there's a time and a place, and
Yeah.
there's a use case and there's a time to let it go.
Mm. Well, there's like so many tech, wearables, tracking apps. Where should people be cautious? I mean, that actually help because I have two iWatches and from Apple, and it's always
Mm,
like
mm.
checking my blood with like bouncing lasers into my skin, and I'm like, how normal is that? I mean, 24 hours a day
Yeah.
flashing like a disco into my wrist. Like I don't know. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
this is a really good question too. That there have actually been examples where people have been using this type of technology, but what they don't realize, they got to read the fine print in some of these things. That the
Mm.
tools that it's using to measure are not calibrated. And again, they don't go back to an ISO standard. There's no compliance. There's no regulation.
Mhm.
There might be a little thing at the bottom saying, you got to use this at your own risk. Like you might need
Mm.
additional tools that have
Mm.
been calibrated, that are
Mm.
trusted, that give
Right.
you, an accurate baseline to be able to base a decision off. So again, it comes back to
Mhm.
decision making. That if you're in a situation where you do have health factors, comorbidities, things like that, and you are at an elevated, risk factor, maybe heart disease, heart attack, something like that. And if you've got a tool telling you everything's okay, but your body's telling you it's not,
Mhm.
that's a problem. And that's where
Right.
you get into there's legal issues with that too.
Right.
What if harm has happened because you decided to make your decisions based on a tool that's not calibrated
Mm.
and something really terrible happens to you? I mean, you look at the consequence going, that's not acceptable. I think for most people, that's not
Right.
acceptable.
Right.
So you've got to come back to and sort of think about, well, what is the level of accuracy that you accept, as a
Right.
consumer?
Right.
Again, decentralized view of the world. If you accept the risk and you know what the risks are, you've made an informed decision. If you've just blindly accepted it and you purchased the gadget because your neighbor has it and because the peer pressure of wanting to be seen doing, and then something bad happens to you, that's a faulty decision process. You haven't
Right.
protected what's important to you.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things in there. So advocating read the manual. Read the manual is sometimes good.
Well, I was
Make
happy
sure
to get
that
my
you're
blood
aware of what
pressure.
you've got.
I was happy to get my blood pressure once a season and my doctor thing. Like that was all I needed. Now suddenly I'm watching it every day. It's like, what, it's creating an awareness that I don't know if it's necessary. So
Mm.
there's that too. Like, do we need this information really? And do we have the patterns? Because like maybe blood pressure always does go down at 10, and we just didn't know that because we didn't measure it. And now we're getting panicking because now we're worried about going down. But had you done your blood pressure at 10, you would know you always go down. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's also a thing in there as well about when you're just flooded with information and you're
Hmm.
flooded with telemetry and you're flooded with data, there is a point at which I think cognitively you have to shut off because you're like,
Yeah.
that's just too much information. I
Yeah.
can't make sense of it. And especially when it comes to health data too, like there's some measures you would measure on a frequency basis that's pretty short, like maybe once a day, once an hour, whatever that happens to be. And there's some stuff you just wouldn't check until a week later because it's just the nature of how the biology and the physiology work. So, and that's also something a lot of the general population perhaps don't know, that there's validity in measuring things frequently, and there's validity in spacing things out. And there's also just as much validity too of the cognitive load. That don't flood yourself with information, because you will go a little bit stir crazy, and you may make decisions based off incomplete data, or an incomplete or an incorrect interpretation of that data too. So it's not just about the accuracy of it, but it's how you've interpreted that to then inform a decision.
Right. I find there's always, as science explodes or expands, there's always more factors we hadn't continued that actually are part of the human body's process. It's like, oh, we didn't know that the brain released that chemical, and it's like, well, now we do. So how can we ever say we can keep that down? Do you think old school traditional wellness approaches can work together with new AI powered ones? Like they can kind of team up? Because that's kind of how I see it. To me, it feels like the future is going to go to a place where technology is assisting the human experience. It's not driving it.
Yeah, I think that there's a real collaborative opportunity there too. And I look at this and I go, I've mentioned tradition, I've talked about previous ways of doing things. Obviously, we're still here as a species, we're still here as a society, through those modalities. Those modalities have helped us stay alive, and being able to procreate to create the next generation. So we've obviously done something right for us to still be here. So there's still validity in having those around, and sure, they could be augmented with the right approaches, with the right guardrails, the right usage. Again, it's like knowing when to use it and when not to use it is really important, because again, you don't want to lose sight of the core of what those principles in those modalities were. So it could help with automating certain things, so there could be more focus on the quality of what has been applied as well.
Yeah, I agree with your point on motivation. It's like when you start working out and going back to the gym, you see no results for a long time. You see no results, and so just to have someone measuring, well, there may be no results, but this happened today, and that's better than yesterday. And that knowing is at least keeps you kind of going. So I agree with you on that as far as motivation is concerned. When someone's picking AI-based fitness app, which is huge now, what should they look out for to make sure it's serving them and not just selling features? Because it seems like now you have the ability to read your blood pressure when you're asleep. Like, why do I need that? Like, I've never read my blood pressure ever. I'm making this up, but it's like there seems to be features of like, who needs that? And it gets lost. Like, does this help me or not? Right?
I'd probably go straight away privacy and ethics. So, have you got a feeling like they're on-selling information that was used in calibrating the app? To me, that'd kind of be a bit of a red flag. It's like, wait, if it was really serving me, why does it need to go and do that? Looking at the personalization as well. If it's really serving me, is it looking at a centralized view or a decentralized view? What standards has it been developed against? And do they serve me? So it is coming back to that thing of and are you getting a net benefit through using it too? Like if it's making you feel terrible, if it's making you feel awful, you're going this way on the graph. You come back and question, going, is that right for you? There might be, and a lot of the times, like I've been hearing this more and more, like especially with solutions and software and things like that. Like Microsoft Windows is also a really good example of this. What I'm about to say, that there's so many features in these products that we use maybe 10% of the full potential of what has been offered. And so, but again, it's about understanding, what are your needs, what are your goals, what's your ambition, how can you match a solution to what it is you're trying to do. Could you build your own using the AI agents as well? Again, like step it through, what are your goals and ambitions, and design it in a way that it meets your needs. That's a possibility too. You don't always have to buy something off the shelf.
I've noticed the Apple Intelligence. Have you followed this? I mean, it seems like Apple is decentralizing some of their AI. Is that true? Is Apple Intelligence really like? It seems though. I mean, I haven't done the research, but it seems as though Apple is only studying me on my phone. It's not going to a cloud. It's not showing information to a cloud. It's got its own processors. This new iPhone 17 that I have, and those processors are just studying me on my phone. Apparently, don't ever tell Apple what it discovers. Is that decentralized AI?
Ooh, it's kind of like. At this point, like all the tech agencies, they might have some things to hide. Like in 15 years' time, we'll probably find out the truth of, was it really doing what we think it's doing? I'd like to believe it, but again, it's like show me the proof, and then I'll believe it. It does look like an example of a decentralized view, but time will tell.
We'll see. Of course, you send yourself an email, but that's an email. What do you think the possibilities of getting excited about AI when it comes to astrology or life coaching or personal guidance? Be careful with how you answer this. Just kidding.
I think that there is a lot of opportunity
Mm-hmm.
in that space. Although, I would sort of come back to, I think, again, it's the way we interpret information, and where is the AI agent sourcing its information to form the basis of how it interprets, astrological alignments, charts of the moment. How
Mm-hmm.
is it actually doing that? And I realize that there's some mathematical calculations that are involved anyway, and AI is generally pretty good at being able to assemble that and perform the calculations correctly. But I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a real art form in being able to do the interpretations and match that to the moment, and I suppose to the level of information that the user or the consumer is at. And as we know in life coaching, that sometimes you have those scenarios where some people just aren't ready for the information that is inside that analysis.
Right.
And how do you stage that? How does the AI know when to push enough information and when not to? That's a skill that I think a lot of humans still have, in their potential. That's where a lot of the strength is at the moment. And just as a human, like, that's what I value, is
Mm-hmm.
that it's that inner knowing. It is knowing your own emotional state. It's knowing your own energy field of how you're communicating to another human being.
Yeah.
AI just isn't quite there yet. I mean, technically it could be correct. Again, the way the interpretations are done, the way how it's offering information, I think there's a lot of work still to be done in that space.
I don't trust it. I mean, every time I've done a search on something, I mean, what AI doesn't have is my psychic ability. And I come up with stuff in the reading that just never been documented by AI. I mean, nor will it be able to. I mean, I think to some degree, there's an argument here for the human race has to go into their other abilities. We have spiritual technologies that we haven't utilized, psychic ability, telepathy, remote viewing, these types of things, which we know exist, but we never developed them. So it almost seems like AI is forcing us into the specialties AI can never do. It's like the only for human beings to stay on top of it is to open up these other doors, which was all mysticism, but certainly will not be recreated by AI. I think we have an artificial intuition, but it'll never sense what I'm thinking, really, unless it reads my brainwaves. But even then, we're getting our mind and thoughts from above us. So, it's MT. It's interesting. What do you think the biggest personal life? Like, one of the things I've had AI offer to do, like, my fight at that, because my calendar is already an algorithm that is too complicated for the average person. And then there's all the anomalies of what ifs and what happens. Do you throw your schedule over to AI, for instance? I mean,
no, I don't. Like, I might do maybe a quick scan and kind of go, is there any, opportunities in here? But I have the final say about what my schedule is and isn't. And there's some things I just don't want the algorithms knowing about. Like,
right.
there's some meetings that no one has a need to know about, certain things.
Yes.
Like, if I've got appointments, if I've got, if they're allied health or something like that. No, that's personal information to me. Like, I'm not going to declare that. And I want that freedom and flexibility to kind of design my own schedule. But perhaps that's also, I'm a lunar Virgo, so it's like no one does scheduling better than me. No one does the planning better than me, and maybe that's just me and my own ego. Like, no, I don't want to relinquish control of that. Not yet. I'm not ready
I tell
for it.
people, you even have something very interesting. It's like, I'm very private in my stuff. I'll be like, meeting with Mr. X, because I think, people in text messages will say things that are meaning illegal activity. Like, people are so forthright with sharing stuff. It's like, dude, if they ever did like just an AI analysis of your text messages over the last year, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, because you've just been outright admitting things, or at least if it's taken out of context, it looks like that. So I myself have been hiding stuff from AI from the beginning. I don't put anything valuable in a Google Gmail, nothing, because they've been reading my emails since their advertising placement. And, we in our company, we're not allowed to send, intelligence through Gmail, because we don't, I don't believe in Gemini, the AI. I believe in Geminis, by the way, but not Gemini, the AI. So for the record, so it's interesting about, it makes you wonder too, how much do you document anymore? Because, should I document the client? Because it could be used against them so quickly if out of context,
I think it depends on the setting in which you're operating as well. Like, in government, it's important to be transparent. Anything we do is FOI, well, freedom of information release. And so I think it's still important to maintain your professional self, when you are at work. If you are documenting things at any time, that can be called upon. And so you still got to maintain a level of professionalism. But in your private life, it's your choice. You can choose or not choose, whatever you want. You've got, there's a level of willpower in there. There are devices out there coming on the market that really focus in on data security and privacy, and being able to keep that, decentralize as much as possible, that you are the master of your own destiny. And they've really focused in on that. So there are solutions that are available. Like if you go searching for them, you can find them. You don't always have to subscribe to the big companies where you know like there's a trust level there. You know that there's a breach. But again, like do you choose to follow through and sign up for that? It's a choice.
Well, I mean, Apple came out with this app that allows you to keep your journals. I'm like, are you crazy? I'm not putting my private journal into a, Siri taking dictation, spelling everything and getting everything wrong. Siri's got to be the dumbest dictator in the world. Sorry, Siri, but you're stupid. But also, like, but besides that, all the corrections I was doing, really, I'm going to talk about how I'm making feelings for Pam, and it's going to be like cross-analyzed to all the Pams in the world, and then figure out that I talk to Pam. The possibilities are there. Like, no. I'm afraid of putting it in a diary at this point in writing because it can be scanned. It's like, now at this point, I'm just feeling like I need to button up and not share anything. That's what I'm feeling.
This is where I get, there's a Star Trek reference coming. It's like anyone who knows me, Star Trek, right? Coming from Voyager. So Star Trek Voyager in that series, and it was the story about the ship that got hurled into the Delta Quadrant and took like 10 years to get home. But they did it in 5 seasons, if you ever watched the series. And there's a character in Voyager named Seven of Nine. And for those who were initiated, she is the Borg who was, she was originally human. She was infested with Borg nanotechnology, became Borg, and then she was rescued by Captain Janeway and her crew, and was, helped to become human again. And her story arc is beautiful, but there's some really interesting episodes where, she's still got her Borg implants and she's, calculating data like an android, and she's trying to make sense of it and things like that. And there's an episode where she has too much information and she's trying to extrapolate on missing information. She misinterprets it and thinks the world's going to end. And she's going around almost like policing everybody, going, because I see this pattern of behavior, it means this. Because I see this pattern of behavior, it means that. And she's missing a lot of context, which is so crucial. And she'd only been on the ship, not as long as everybody else. And so she was missing history. She was missing, the human condition, which she was still learning. And so I think Star Trek is beautiful for this, because it's like, it's already forecasting ahead the things that we're going to come into right now. Like, we've seen episodes where they were developing technology like the iPad. There's episodes with Captain Picard where he's got like the pad in front of him, and they're like, we designed that 20-something years later. That became a commercial reality.
Totally, and and everything,
And so you kind of look at how did the writers in Star Trek solve those problems, as part of the plot lines, and you kind of go, you might be able to get some comfort and some assurance through the narratives that were being broadcast in those moments.
I want to ask a question that might be a little dark and not something light, but there have been some stories here in the United States about people who were encouraged by ChatGPT to end their own lives. I don't know if you've heard this. What kind of ethical boundaries do you think are needed in one of these sessions? And I have to say, I had private people telling me that when they go down a rabbit hole, like being demonic or talking about how to cast spells against someone else, ChatGPT just runs right along with it, gives them the instructions on how to do it and whatnot. It seems like ChatGPT will help you do everything, including plan a murder. So the question is like, where's the line? Between self-help and personal guidance.
Yeah. It is such a dark topic as well. Like the loss of human life, through any creation it's tragic and it's really sad. We've had similar instances like that here in Australia. One approach that our government started to take was to look at the younger population and see if there was a way to enforce controls where certain people up to an age cannot access certain platforms. So there's a ban on, being able to access social media. Maybe that might get extended to things like Grok, Claude, Copilot, what have you. Maybe. How effective those controls will be, I have no idea. No one really knows. There's been no longitudinal studies to be able to suggest, what works and what doesn't. We're kind of at the mercy of our own wisdom and how we apply it, in moments like these. The way how these AI agents are being designed as well, again, it's kind of a case of, we're pushing a boundary here. We're waiting to get caught. Something terrible happens. Then we have to go back and reflect and review. We're not coming back to think about, let's risk assess from the get-go, run those risk workshops, get in the room, think about and simulate all the scenarios that could potentially happen that could be devastating. The loss of a human life is unacceptable to society, and therefore it should be unacceptable to the company. That if your product is doing harm, you need to come back to the drawing board and think about how you've designed that from the get-go. But again, those conversations are happening way too late in the piece. We're waiting until something really badly consequential has happened to come back and then redesign. It should have happened from the start.
Interesting. Yeah, if you weren't so expensive, Bree. No, I'm kidding. I can't afford that risk assessment. That's too much. We're going to cut some lines. So on a happy note, are there any AI tools out there that you would genuinely help people move forward that you're familiar with? Personal growth and understanding. Anything you put out there? I have one. I'll name if you do.
This is kind of based on a little bit of quick research out there too, because it's like tomorrow it'll be the next suite of product tools. It's like go out there and do the search. Today I'm aware of there's a Rocky AI, so for stress testing, for goal setting, helping out with adaptive paths. Apparently it's got some non-judgmental support, but again, if it's an AI, it's got something pre-built in there. But if it helps you do better in life, maybe have a look at it. Notion AI is another option that's helping you to build reflective journals. So if you're a writer, if you're a communicator, you need to get things out in words, that could be an option. There's also Reclaim AI, so how you can automate routines. It's like, for me, I like my own routines the way they are, but some people, they might need some help and support in that space. How do you use your energy for growth? Little options and some helper tools inside of there. That'd be probably my 3 picks. But again, it's always changing, so there's always new products coming out all the time. And then there's actually tools out there like Replit, and that's another one that's making waves that you can go in there and you can kind of build your own solution. So if you've got a really neat idea, that's a platform that can help you start to condense your idea and sort of try and make that a practical reality, or at least blueprint it out, and you've got a template or a proof of concept.
Well, I use a program called Read.ai, and it actually eavesdrops on all my Zoom calls, but it's for reading and stuff like that. It documents every word said. It's searchable, the reports that come out. It's really helped us, and it provides a larger scope of my business at large. It's also good to see like every company meetings in there. So it's like, did we talk about this? Search, yes, we did. So that's been a very helpful one I'm really happy with. And the comprehension seems awesome. If Bill Gates buys it, I will stop using it. All right. So how can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Look for my name. I've got my website, breemclennan.com. You can email me as well, or circles and channels like this. I think I'm still an active participant in the Serious Joy forums as well. So I'm there. It's like I don't always post, but I'm always watching and I'm always listening.
Yes, and with a good heart and being a good soul. It's always a pleasure, Bree, to be with you and work with you. And I look forward to our future and what unfolds. Hopefully, it will not be a dystopia, and we'll continue to be recording in a nice, comfy home. We'll see. But thank you for coming. Maybe about 6 months, I think, would be a great time to see you again, perhaps, because it's moving fast. It'd
be great to have another conversation, Christopher. And thank you so much for the opportunity to have a great chat about AI and all the things today.
I think it's going to be a topic we'll talk about for the rest of our lives. So don't get bored with it. Thank you, Bree.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Well, this has been another awesome edition of Learning About AI. I think it's something we have to pay close attention to, and as conscious human beings, we have to, stand up, be heard, don't let things get out of hand, because things are moving really quickly. It's pretty amazing how fast. Again, if you go to the Grok video producer, I cannot believe how real that looks. It makes you realize, wow, we're really, I'm a filmmaker. I mean, I went to school for film, so I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's better than Back to the Future's effects. It's better than the effects in most films I see. So, and I just, in 30 seconds, it makes that. So, I think the more outspoken you are, the more the AI will identify you as a traitor. And you should be careful. So, no, I do mean that we just have to be conscious, and that's the way it has to be. All right. Well, we'll see you next week, everyone. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. Live, love, be. Now live on SeriousJoy.com, Moon Wisdom, what the Sagittarius new and full moon will mean to you.